Hey guys, this is Ph33roX for HUSNG.com. Today I'll be doing part 7 of my free Leakfinder series. There is one more video to be released after this one, and then I will start working on a new series. I plan to make some concept videos, so feel free if you have any suggestions for topics that you want me to discuss. Today we'll be looking at a couple of games at the $30 level. I didn't receive any notes, so we'll approach the game as readless. So first hand we raise 7-6 suited, very standard. Flop is King 10-5 with a flush draw. It's a flop that hits a flatting range decently well, so I'll be looking to give up here against some opponents, but readless I think we can go ahead and c-bet. Half pot here. We get check raised to 120, so we'll fold that and move to the next hand. Our opponent open folds the button and we raise 8-4 off, get called again. This time we get a very wet board, but we do have a gut shot and a low backdoor flush draw, so I think we can go ahead and c-bet here and potentially barrel off if he check calls. When people flat on wet boards, it often caps the range, especially after we saw someone check raise us on the flop. I expect his check calling range to be pretty marginal on this flop. So we bet, and this time we do get a fold. We raise a limp with Queen Jack suited. Sizing looks fine. Villain re-raises us basically all in. I expect he would have a bunch of pocket pairs and ace-x hands. We can't have terrible equity, but I still prefer a fold. If he raised us to 150 or so, this is actually a hand that flops well enough that we can call and stack off with any piece of the flop. But given the sizing, we have to fold. Now that we know that he has strong hands in his limping range, I'll be looking to tighten up my raising range versus a limp. So we raise Queen Queen, get called again. Flop is Ace Jack Jack with a flush draw. There are not many hands we can get value from, basically King High and flush draws. But we do have a second not backdoor flush draw, so a heart on the turn isn't bad for us. I think I would like to see us check here and maybe allow him to bluff or hit a lower pair on the turn. If we didn't have a backdoor flush draw, I think it would be closer to a bet, because basically hard turns are going to be harder to play. So we do c-bet, he calls. At this point his range is Jack X, Ace X, flush draws and King High. I don't think King High will keep calling very often, so by betting we're mostly looking to charge flush draws. I don't think that's a big enough of a value target for us to be betting again into a range that still contains all the strong hands. We do bet again and get called. River isn't great, but fortunately he checks. We're obviously showing down our hand now. He does have King High. This is a hand that I would immediately make a note of. This might be a player that generally doesn't like to give credit, which means we'll be looking to tighten up a bit with our c-betting and barreling ranges. So our opponent limps again and we check back 6 high. Flop is a 7-5 rainbow. I think this is a decent flop to contest given how dry it is and given we have about 16% equity versus basically anything. How we contest will depend on who we play. If we know he stabs a lot when checked to, it's better to go for a check raise, and if he doesn't, then it's better to just lead out. There are two problems with this against this particular villain. First is we've seen he has strong hands in his limping range, and second is we've seen him get stubborn on a dry ace high board with king high. So actually when I think about it, it's pretty close. The board texture and our hand encourage us to bluff here, but our opponent's tendencies discourage us from bluffing, which result in a pretty close spot. So let's see what we do. Looks like we went for a check call, which is the line I like the least. We don't have enough equity to just continue passively here. Our opponent checks back a 9 turn and the river is a 5. I don't mind going for a small bet here to fold out hands like jack high or 8 high that stabbed the flop and gave up. Yeah, I like small sizing because I think his calling range isn't really affected by sizing. I think he's gonna call his bluff catchers even if we bet pot, and he's gonna fold jack high even if we bet half pot. So we get a fold, which is great. We min raise 8-2 suited, get 3-bet. This is the 4th hand we've opened against him, and this is his first 3-bet. We face a limp again, this time with 10-6 off. Check back, we get a 4-deuce-3 rainbow flop. Again, a pretty good board to attack with our gut shot and 2 over cards. We decided to check though, which I think is reasonable against this player. This time he bets pot, and we've seen that his half pot stab on the a7-5 rainbow was weak, given that he folded the river. So I assume his potting range is probably stronger, and I would just get out of the way here with a pretty weak draw and being out of position for the rest of the hand. So we raise ace-5 suited, get 3-bet again. Now I might be looking to tighten up my small blind ranges a bit, maybe limp more hands. He played 5 out of 5 hands so far in the big blind, and we've seen that he also likes to stick around post flop, so I think we can make some adjustments now. King 10 off is still a hand I would raise. I might check back King 8 off against him, where readless I would raise it, but King 10 off I think is too strong to check. Flop is 4-4-5 with a flush draw. We're obviously going to c-bet here because it's relatively hard for a limp calling hand to hit this flop. We get raised to 200. Not much we can do. If we want to play back here, we would need to commit our entire stack, and I don't think that would be a wise idea. So this dude seems to give us a lot of troubles post flop. Hopefully we can find a spot to punish him for that, but sometimes we just don't get those spots, and it's important to not spew and make mistakes. Queen 4 off I think is a reasonable fold given our reads. I would probably try and limp it though. Our opponent open folds another button. This is the second button he folded, so he does seem to have some hand selection pre-flop. We get a real hand, and obviously he makes his first out of position fold. He folds another button. And deuce off I think is again a reasonable fold, but I would like to see you at least try to incorporate limping into your strategy against him. Jack 8 off is a very good hand to check back in the big blind. We check the flop, our opponent min bets. We go for a small check raise. I think that's reasonable. He did stab 3 out of 3 times after limping, and we do have a sort of a sizing tell from previous hands suggesting half pot being weaker. I think if we had some sort of equity like Jack 9, I would like this a lot, but even with only one overcard to second pair and some backdoor straight potential, I don't think that's a bad play. We invest 75 to win 90, so we only need this to work around 40% of the time, I think, something like that. We raised 10-7 off. I think that's okay. We can also limp this hand. We get a pretty dry flop, and this time we pick it up with a c-bet. Queen Jack suited, facing the first raise from this guy. Nothing to do here but flat. Terrible flop, so we check and fold. Finally we're doing some limping. I think 7-5 off is an okay hand for that. We don't seem to have a lot of fold equity in position against him, so I'm happy with playing some smaller pots with my weak hands. He checks a semi-wet board to us. We have no equity, but I think he should be folding at least 1/3 of the time here after checking pre-flop and checking the flop. After this hand worked out well for us, I'll be looking to limp some more weak hands against him. We get another good hand to check in the big blind. This time we flop an open-ended straight draw on a paired board. Given he has always bet so far when checked to, I would check to him again. We have 2 options now when he bets, either calling or raising. I think if we didn't raise the previous time, this would be an automatic raise. I would make it 75 and expect him to fold just a ton of his range. This is also kind of a wet board, so I expect him to use his pot sizing with a 10 or a jack. Having said that, while we have a decent draw, it's not one that we're happy getting all the money in with. So if he does 3-bet the flop, it would be very unfortunate for us, but I don't think that's going to happen very frequently, so I'm not too concerned with that. Let's see what we do. Look like we went for a check call, which isn't bad. We get a great turn, and I think we should be leading out here. I don't think he's going to barrel off very light. We've seen him give up when we check called on the ace high board, and this card does connect with our perceived check calling range on the flop. This card also puts a second flush draw on board, and every 9 or 8 in his hand is now a straight draw. So I think there's also merit in betting to charge his draws. If he did have a 10 on the flop, he's almost certainly going to check back on this turn. So we do better by betting against that part of his range. Although, as I said, I don't think that's a very big part. So yeah, I like betting here. Looked like we bet 60 and he folded, which is unfortunate. I think I would rather bet something like 80, but 60 is not too bad either. A3 off is an open shove at this stack depth. We run into 7s, he flops a set, so we lose that one. We're very short stack now, so we'll be using Nash ranges. He folds his button, king 5 off is a jam up to 10 BB, I think. We get called by queen 6 and lose. So that would be the end of this match. It took longer than average to review, so I won't have time to include another match. I think we had some interesting hands here. As I said, my next video would be the last in this series. I plan to make it a bit longer to give the series a nice closure. As always, let me know if you have questions or feedback. This was Ph33roX for HUSNG.com. Take care.